Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Phins Forecast. My name's Anthony Pinzone. I'm joined by Josh, aka Aqua Ace.
Let's
Uh,
go.
Taylor and Keith will be joining us again next week, but both had unfortunately had things they had to take care of tonight. So you just get the two of us goofballs instead. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So Josh, tonight, man, we have a big conversation ahead of us. We
hmm
have talked so much about like what types of players we should target, what positions we should target, what guys we should or shouldn't bring back. All this leading up to the NFL free agency period, which I believe starts on the 13th, which is just 8 days away from the recording of this
So
episode
close.
here,
So close.
right around the corner. And of course, with free agency beginning, that means the mock drafts are ramping up for the NFL draft.
hmm
So tonight, we're talking actual real life players that we want to target in free agency. We're talking the trends that we've seen from Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel over the past 3 seasons in terms of like what types of free agents they like to sign, who they like to spend money on, and who they like to just wait to sign after June 1st, right? And then, of course, we're looking around the internet all over the globe for anybody and everybody's mock draft to see who are the names that are appearing at number 13 to the Miami Dolphins the most. So we have a lot to get into, man. Let me go ahead and ring up this intro, and then we can jump right into it.
Let's go.
All right, and here we are. We are getting ready to talk some free agency and mock draft roundup. But Josh, of course, we need to start every episode by talking about the human beings on the show. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm living it. I am living my best life, or at least trying to. My wife is going away for a couple days for a work thing, starting tomorrow. So it's just going to be me and the dog, and I'm going to use that time to get some prep work done for our next show. I'm really excited about that one. And just really, really pumped to be here, man. Sad to be missing the other two, but glad that you and I can jump on and chop it up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never the same without the four of us, but you know what? We'll hold the fort down for tonight. That's for sure. Listen, I know for a fact those 3 days you're going to spend studying these, NFL draft prospects. That already you are like light years ahead of me in terms of who these guys are, what their measurables are. I've watched a few of the combine videos out there, kind of rating how people are. We've seen some already, some like
skyrocket up the board, man.
Yeah, we've seen guys skyrocket.
Yeah.
Armand Membo or whatever the heck his name is.
Membo.
Yeah, he has just taken an absolute straight shot to the moon. Because we were talking about him as potentially not going in the first round just a couple weeks ago, and now he's going.
It's wild,
fifth.
man.
He's going fifth to the Patriots, right? So like that dude is skyrocketing. Shedeur Sanders, as expected, has been a bit of an up and down roller coaster. He comes from the Sanders family, so he's got bravado. Not everybody likes bravado, so the only thing I'll say on that, dude, is if you're gonna talk poorly about somebody, at least put your name on it. These anonymous guys hiding behind, they're like keyboard warriors, dude. Like, get out of here with that.
Yeah, I don't like that stuff either, man.
If you're gonna come out and you're gonna badmouth a 21-year-old kid who's just trying to make a way for himself, I know he comes from a rich family. He's got money. He's never had to, deal with much. But like, this is still his career. His dad ain't going out there and playing for him.
True.
So like, to put down a 21-year-old in the media without putting your name on it, come on.
Yeah, but I will say this, right? And I know we've had plenty of conversations in our group chat about this specific topic, about this very specific player. If and again, anonymous, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. In this case, who the hell knows? We weren't in the room.
Sure.
But if there is any kind of validity to the reports that he walked in cocky, thinking that his stuff didn't stink, I understand that he comes from the Sanders family and his dad walked in with chains and leather jackets and all that crap. But like, you need to make like first impressions matter. Right. And I know this from like my career. Right. And this, most people know this. Right. And if that's the first impression that you're going to make, good for you. But if it backfires, don't be shocked.
You know what though? It's not the same bar for everybody because just
I
a
know.
week ago, Cam Ward was talking smack about like if you want to draft me or not already, and there was no
Yeah.
fire from that, right? I mean, that's just as much bravado in my mind, and that was
Yeah.
public. We could hear that,
Well, yeah.
know.
Didn't he say it like in a
He-
combine interview?
yeah, it was in an interview right at the yeah. So like, it's just different standards for different players, and that's how
Hmm.
the world works. I get it, but
Of
like
course. Yeah.
you know, it's crazy. He'll still go top three. He'll be fine. He's still rich regardless,
Yeah. I mean,
So,
he's already top 3 and he hasn't even been drafted yet. So I think we're fine.
exactly. All right, man. So let's get into the news of the NFL first
Hmm.
here. Aside from the combine being done, any other notes you wanted to make on the combine that you're not going to make later?
No,
Okay,
I'm covering quite a lot on this one. So
perfect, 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 perfect. All right, so Devontae Adams has been released by the Jets. We kind of saw that one coming, right? It's been speculated
yeah,
for a while now. Just a lot of money on the books, no quarterback. What's the point?
yeah.
So
And it
the
makes
Jets
sense
just
from them.
yeah, the Jets just doing Jets things. Of course, they
Hmm.
send draft picks away last year to get Devontae Adams in the building. They end up winning 5 games or however many they won, and now they cut him. So they got nothing out of that investment,
Yeah.
which you know. Well,
I
now
mean, look, I don't think they wanted him. I think Rodgers wanted him,
sure,
right? Because all Rodgers wanted was to bring his boys along with him from the nursing home. And look, he had, he had a reasonable season, all things considered. I mean, he had over 1,000 yards, right? I mean,
yeah,
weeks 1 through 3 with the Raiders, 18 receptions, 209 yards, 1 tud. And then week 7 through 18, 856 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, respectable season for his age, right? Still a really good player, but there was no way once Rodgers left that he was staying on that team.
yeah. And we have to ask the question because we are Dolphins fans and we are in need of a third wide receiver. Is there a chance Miami looks to bring him in? Is there a chance he would even want to come here? That's a lot of personality in the wide
Yeah.
receiver room.
Yeah. Well, reports are that he wants to, I mean, I think everyone wants to be on a contender, right?
Of course.
And so that makes sense. Now, does it make sense for the Dolphins? Absolutely not. Right. I mean, an argument could be made. Okay, we need a wide receiver 3 and or a wide receiver 2 when inevitably we get hit with the injury bug that seems to happen every year. But I just think there's better options out there. There's younger options. There's better options in the draft. And with the money that he's probably going to want because it's his last kind of hurrah, I just don't see it. I don't see it making sense. We made that mistake with OBJ already.
I gotta say though, if we moved on from Hill, I'd be tempted. I'd be real tempted from
Well,
there.
I mean, that changes everything. I mean,
Right.
if we move on from Hill, I think the gloves are off. We might trade for someone. We might sign a few of these higher priced free agents. You know what I mean?
Which we probably should note because we mentioned this a lot. We have no information that we're trying to trade Tyreek Hill. Like
No.
it's a pipe dream at this point. We're a little
Mhm.
over the antics, but it's very unrealistic to expect he's going to get moved. But we've seen
Right, of
crazier
course.
things that have happened.
I mean, us trading for him was absolutely
Right.
batshit at the time, right? I
It
mean, who the
happened in
hell
like a
knew?
day, right? There was
Yeah.
no rumors.
And then it's like an hour later, he's up,
Right.
traded the Dolphins.
Like the morning of
What?
some random Tuesday or some crap,
Mhm.
there's a rumor that he could get traded, and then boom, he's traded to the Dolphins. Like it was
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it's unbelievably fast. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't put anything past him with all of the moving pieces and wide receivers, and I know we'll talk about this later that have been released from their teams. I mean, who the hell knows what can happen, right? Under the assumption, again, to your point, Anthony, we are not stating anything that we know for a fact. We're just stating our hopes and dreams that, the Dolphins want to trade Hill, right? I mean, either way, he's not going to be on this team next year, right? So even if we don't trade, I mean, the argument is made, trade him now so you not only get the cap relief next season, but then you also get compensation this season. Or the other side of the coin is we keep him, we get what we can out of him. Hopefully he goes back to the 1,700-yard season, assuming we have an offensive line. And then we get the cap relief. So, I mean, there's a ton of different avenues with him.
Sure.
Yeah.
In other news, Matthew Stafford staying with the Rams. That's kind of no news is good news sort of thing there. I think that's the best fit for him.
For sure. Yeah.
That's he's got a good team around him. He doesn't have to move his family. You take a
Mhm.
few $1 million less a year. I mean, it feels worth it.
Yeah, this was something that I never understood why it was a story.
Yeah.
I mean, there was under no scenario, in my opinion.
The two teams making the big offers were the Raiders and the Giants, reportedly. And if you're Matthew Stafford and you're sitting there looking at your options here and you're going, well, the Rams, who just almost made it to the Super Bowl, the Raiders, who have never made it to the Super Bowl. I'm sure they have, but it's been forever. And then the Giants, who are like a
Dumpster
one
fire.
loss away from losing both their GM and their head coach, right? Like, which of these is not like the other?
Well, and look at the weapons, right? I mean, I know Cooper Kupp's probably out, but you have a young Puka Nacua, you have a young Tyler Higbee, you have, a really decent
Kyron
offensive
Williams.
line, Kyron Williams, right? I mean, and a stacked defense with 2 stud, which will be second-year players.
Kudos to the offensive line coach, right? Because at the beginning of the year, that offensive line was horrid.
Hot garbage.
Yeah. I mean, really good job turning that around.
Now, there was a report, we would be remiss if we didn't mention it, that I think it was one of the 2 teams. I want to say it was the Raiders, but one of those 2 teams had compensation already agreed on with both teams and a contract agreed to with Stafford.
It was the Giants.
It was the Giants, yeah. And then, I think the Rams went to Stafford and be like, hey, to make this work, you have to do X. And he was like, fine, let's sign on, I don't want to leave. Don't make me leave, coach.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been to LA, so I don't know comparisons between the living situations on both sides. I obviously live over here.
Right.
In the
They're the same. I've lived in LA. Well, I lived in California, which is all the same. And it's very comparable, if not a slight bit cheaper than what New York is right now.
Yeah. I mean, but of course he has to live in Jersey, right? Because you're in East Rutherford there. It's not the nicest area of Jersey either. No. Although
the shoe of the East Coast. Anyways.
I was born and raised there, but I don't want to go back. So other quarterback news, Sam Darnold, his future's still very much up in the air. It doesn't appear, they haven't used a franchise tag on him up to this point, the night of March 5th. I have to believe there's been conversations between his camp and the Vikings camp.
Reports have come out that there have been.
Okay, so coaches and players can't talk right now. I think we're still in the actual season hasn't started yet, so they can't talk in this time period because stupid. But we all know they don't make any sense.
Unless you're Stephen Ross, and then you lose a first-round pick for doing the same thing everyone else does.
It's the most antiquated rule I've ever heard in my life. Like, oh no, there's 2 months between when the season ends and starts. Coaches and players couldn't possibly talk in that time period. Meanwhile, Stafford and McVay, before Stafford was on the Rams, were vacationing together in like Cabo or something.
Yeah, playing golf. Yeah.
Anyways. So Sam Darnold's pretty much the guy who's going to determine where the rest of the quarterbacks land. Now, we don't really have to worry about this because we have a quarterback, much to the chagrin of many of our fans out there who think Tua stinks.
None on this show, though.
No. But the commenters are writing right now. They're preparing the comments.
I know.
It's copied and pasted every week, I feel like. All right, let's move on.
We love it.
Absolutely love it. So the quarterback free agency doesn't excite me that much, to be honest. I mean, you got Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold. Like, it's okay.
Sure. Great. Yeah. Next.
Right. The Bears, man, under Ben Johnson, they're making moves here. So they've traded now for the Chiefs guard Joe Thuney and for the Rams guard Jonah Jackson. So 2 guards traded for. They traded a 4th and a 6th round pick. Now, this could backfire, but I think the fan base just wants to see something happening.
Yeah, I actually am a huge fan of these moves, not just in general, but for this team specifically. I mean, this team their offensive line was in shambles. Yeah. I mean, was absolutely atrocious. I think the only offensive line, in my opinion, that was worse than theirs was Cincinnati's, right? And, Joe Thuney, second time he was an all-pro, I think, last year.
Time all-pro.
Yeah. You got to love it. They're obviously more concerned about the offensive line than we were last year.
It's interesting. It does speak, I think, to the fact that there's not a lot of free agent, offensive linemen out there, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There are some.
There's some good ones, though. Some good ones from our perspective.
Right. I just don't want people to take it in a way that I'm saying there's nobody. There are some people, but there's 32 teams who need offensive linemen every single year.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the number of teams who need them compared to the number of guys who are available,
and hence why you pay certain players that should not make $15 million a year.
Right. The guy who, I don't even remember his name anymore. The one who we went to the Carolina Panthers from Miami. You re-signed that guy.
Yeah.
What's that?
You're talking about Hunt?
Yeah. Hunt.
Yeah. I think he was worth, not from our perspective, he was worth every penny of that $100 million contract.
Should have paid it. Should have paid it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk plenty of offensive line. Let's talk receiver because we've talked a lot about like where are we going to get players for these different needs that we have, which are aplenty. Honestly, we have 38 players who are free agents this year, so we got a lot of needs. But wide receiver comes up a lot as to like the argument of, well, do you take a guy in the draft or do you take a free agent, right? We have seen teams be successful with both of these strategies. And now we've seen a few guys hit the free agent market who are kind of tempting names. So today, the Jaguars released Christian Kirk. Today, the Seattle Seahawks released Tyler Lockett. Both guys I imagine are on the radar of our coaching staff, being as their exact, the exact replica of what they want in a wide receiver. Yeah. Not quite what we want in a wide receiver.
No, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like either of these names for this team, right? Assuming they're going to make what I think they're going to make. Right. I mean, if they want the vet min or like a couple, like $2 or $3 million, fine, but they're gonna want some money.
I would bet you if one of these two falls through the cracks into the post June 1st, then Miami's looking at them. Yeah. I don't think they will. I think they still have enough, gravitas behind their names. Tyler Lockett has been 1,000-yard receiver for years now, even with DK Metcalf on the other side of the field. And then Christian Kirk, I feel like, was Trevor Lawrence's favorite weapon, and then they went and released him. That makes no sense. So
that's wild.
His injuries have to be worse than anybody knows.
Yeah, well, that and his contract, right? Because his contract, they paid him a stupid amount of money. I mean, an absolute stupid amount of money, which, that's a lot of money. Such a Jaguars move.
100% is. They're going to do something stupid in the draft, too.
Oh, yeah.
In other news, though, Deebo Samuel traded to the Commanders for just a 5th-round pick. This surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, this one was, when I first saw the news, my initial reaction was, holy crap. That's all it took?
Right.
But then when you dig into it, like, they're on the hook for the entire contract, right? And, the 49ers were like, we'll take, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not in the room, but, we'll take less we'll take a lesser draft pick if you take on the more of the financial burden, because we don't want to take on any of that contract, which a lot of teams will do when they're trading big players like this that have big ticket items or a big ticket value attached to their name in the trade. A lot of teams will say, okay, well, we'll take 20% of the contract, or you guys take 20% of the contract, but we're going to give you a better draft pick, or vice versa. So, digging into the minutia of the actual trade, it made sense. And honestly, I think Deebo's off a cliff right now. I mean, last year he had an okay year, right? 670 yards receiving with 3 touchdowns. Yeah, just under 200 yards rushing with a touchdown. But that's it. That's on the team with weapons all around him. Right.
Well, I think I said it last week or the week before. I mean, this is a man who has had one good season. And I think the question I asked was, will NFL teams see that, right? Will they see that he's only had one good season and he's been in the league for 5 years, or will they see that one good season as where he could be and pay up for that? Then it's perfect fit there. Washington has almost no money in their wide receiver core. Terry McLaurin is the only guy who's making any sort of money there, and everybody else was just
drafted, drafted last year.
Guys they signed off the street or somebody they drafted. So they had Alameda Zacchaeus, they had De'Ami Brown, like they had just guys who weren't making a ton of money. So it makes a ton of sense for the
Commanders. But I feel like teams, especially nowadays in this new era of football, versatility is key. I mean, you look at it with the Dolphins, you look at someone like Devon Achane, right? Who maybe 5 years ago is a bench player or a third option, but because nowadays he's versatile, he's our starter. And I feel like that's where teams kind of lose focus when they're looking at Deebo, is that, oh, wait a minute, he can block. Okay. He can run. Okay. He can take a ball and take a direct snap and do something with it. He can receive, or he's good in the intermediate game. He's decent in the short game. And so with how Washington played last year with their quarterback, they either at the beginning of the season, they shrunk the field. So they would do rollouts and try to just give them one read or 2 reads and rip it or throw it to your check down. And then later in the season, it was all like us. It was all short and intermediate routes with a few deep balls thrown in. So Deebo should feast, in that offense as the number 2.
Yeah, I doubt Eckler's back now because I feel like Debo fills all the things that Eckler was
True.
doing,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
didn't even think about that. Yeah.
and he's going to be a fantasy stud. That means because if he can stay healthy, which has always been his problem.
Yep.
Austin Eckler, dude, just wrong time for him. Like you said, with versatility, like Devon Achane wouldn't have been a starter 7 years ago when Eckler first came into the league, right? But now, like, that's just the way the league is going right now.
Yeah, that's wild.
Just 2 more things I want to talk about in the news. T. Higgins was franchise tagged, poor guy. So he's stuck with the the Bengals until they decide to either move him or sign him to an extension. And then one free agent that we had talked about on the show as a potential target for the Miami Dolphins didn't even make it to free agency, and that was Osi Odigizua in the Dallas Cowboys, who got pizzade, as Rich Eisen would say. $20 million a year. You know, when I first saw this contract, I thought to myself, holy crap, that's a lot of money. Then I went over to Over the Clock, or whatever it's called. Over the Cap, sorry, not Over the Clock. Over the Cap. Overtheclock.com is for anybody who wants.
Yeah, did you go through the woods and past Grandma's house?
To grandmother's house, yeah. So I went to Over the Cap. I check it out. It's the 15th highest paid defensive tackle, which is wild. Defensive tackles be getting paid these days.
Yeah, that's a Dallas move right there. If I've ever seen one, right?
I thought it was a good move.
No, I do too, but I just don't think personally. I don't think the 1.5 years of solid production equates to what they paid him. In my opinion, that is just my opinion, right? I mean, if he shows out, good for them, right?
The biggest problem with that is that like guys are getting paid because the cap keeps going up, right? So like even if you're not worth it, you're getting paid, right? Oh, and I can't forget, speaking of defensive line, Max Crosby just signed a mega deal, which I can't think of a more deserving person.
Right. Yeah. This guy epitomizes football, right? Yeah. I mean, 12 he only played 12 games last year, 40 something, whatever, 48 tackles total, and then 7.5 sacks, right, in his 12 games. So worth every penny.
Non-QB in the league, I think they said.
Was that 100 and I forgot what it was.
Like 106 million or something like that.
Like 97 something guaranteed, 94 something guaranteed for fucking Jesus.
He's making a lot of money. He'll be fine.
I wouldn't even know what to do with that kind of money.
It's all be in the bank because I don't have anything to spend that kind of money on. I'd just be like, okay, well,
a few things.
I'd pay off my house and then I would still have $96 million left.
That's so funny.
All right. So that's it for the news. A lot of news this week, and it'll continue to be a lot of news as we get closer to free agency and closer to the draft. So, let us know in the comments what you think of all of these happenings around the NFL. Anything that you would like to see the Dolphins do that some of these other teams have already done. Any releases you would like to see us make? Because outside of the few releases we made last week, we've been silent. So it's been quiet down in South Beach. All right. It is time to get into free agency.
Oh, I'm so excited.
We just talked a lot about guys who are getting released and all this other stuff. So now we're going to talk about free agency. And we're going to start with trends.
Yes.
Chris Grier, Mike McDaniel, they've been together for 3 years now.
Jesus.
They have signed probably close to 100 guys. I don't know the exact number. I'm not sitting here counting. Are there any trends within these signings that we have seen? So let's first go over who just some of the big ticket signees were. Back in 2022, when we grabbed Teron Armstead, I think we were all super pumped about that one, right? I'm just going to do one per year. So then the next year, you could say Van Gink, but that would be revisionist history. I don't even see one here. I think our biggest signing was probably David Long Jr. at this point. We didn't have a huge free agency signing in 2023.
Well, when was Alec Ingold signed? Was that in 2020?
Ingold was 2022 with Armstead, so that was.
But he got a contract, but it was for a 1-year deal, and we extended him in 23.
Probably.
So if we want to count that in 23, I would say he's probably the biggest.
Ingold,
like the biggest impact player, right? Because
let's just say the biggest 3 we've signed over the last 3 years would easily be Armstead, Ingold, and probably Jonnu Smith this past year.
Yeah, well, don't forget Jordan Poyer.
And listen, all that to say though, they have started to kind of get on a roll here because last year we saw quite a few, right? We saw Jonnu Smith, we saw Jordan Brooks, we saw Aaron Brewer. 3 huge signings. Anthony Walker Jr. was another big signing, right? So that's 4 in 1 year. And if I look back at the 2 years prior, I couldn't find you 4 guys that I was excited about signing.
Yeah, same, right. And then you look at what they did in the middle of the season with Terrell Dotson, who word on the street is we're in the middle of talking to about resigning. I mean,
Perfect.
they really made some solid choices kind of last year, outside of a handful of players like Jordan Poyer or Shaquille Barrett, who retired and unretired and retired and wanted to go play somewhere. I don't know, whatever. But you look at not focusing on the players, right? So in 2023. It was all about strategic signings. It was all about depth enhancement. It was about kind of building and shaping the roster. And then in 2024, we really focused on who can we plug in from a veteran leadership standpoint to really kind of smooth out the edges. Now they failed in a lot of cases, right? So they whiffed on a bunch of, it's all a crapshoot. You don't know how the player's going to play, but they also, to your point, they hit some triples and some home runs, in my opinion, right? I mean, we have a starting linebacker who I hope we resign. We have a record-breaking tight end in Dolphins history, and it was all about kind of shaping contract management as well. So if you looked at a lot of the moves they made last year, for example, it was really about, okay, how can we set ourselves up so that when some of these bigger ticket cap hits kind of hit our books, we're in shape to either move away from them with very minimal kind of impact to our everyday lives, or how can we move them? Can we trade them? How do we get off of things? Right. And so, as everyone on this show knows and everyone watching, there are life cycles to a team, right? So you rebuild, which we're all too familiar with. You accumulate draft capital and you do everything you need to do to build to add youth to your team, youth and talent to your team. And then I can't think of the word that I'm trying to say, but your additions thereafter in the next maybe second or third year of this iteration of the team is adding key free agents, key veterans to help mentor, to help shape, and then you towards the tail end of your 5 to 6 year window, depending on how it goes, unless you're the Chiefs, then it's contract management. How are we going to get off some of these contracts and so on and so forth. So I think we're getting there to that part of it.
Yeah, in 2022, I mean, the free agency was big, but also, I mean, we traded for Tyreek Hill in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
We traded for Bradley Chubb in 2022. So, like,
those were both in 22. Jesus, I feel like they were yesterday.
Right? Yeah. Big offseason. And speaking of Bradley Chubb, we just restructured his contract, so he'll be back with us next year. There were some questions around that. So I think, one of the things I wanted to talk about here was the offensive line. We talk about this every single week because it's outside of Tua, it's the hottest topic when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. And listen, they tried to add bodies on the offensive line. They just failed to really add the right bodies, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking, okay, so 2022, we signed Teron Armstead. That's a great signing. Connor Williams, great signing, right? Those were both solid signings. Offensive line was looking good after that season. Well, was looking better, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, top 15, right?
Yeah.
I mean, which is all you can ask for. I mean, I would take that today.
Right. So then the next year we signed Kendall Lamb, was a great depth piece. Dan Feeney was a decent depth piece as well, but nobody else. And you can't tell me that 2022 offensive line was so good that the next year you only needed to sign 2 guys, right?
Yeah.
And then, I don't forget who we drafted. This may have been the Liam Eichenberg draft here.
I think so. It was the Austin Jackson, Liam Eichenberg draft, I believe.
Okay, so Austin Jackson, who didn't work out right away, and Liam Eichenberg, who still hasn't worked out. That didn't really work out too well for us. And then in 2024 was the coveted, you guys are more worried about the offensive line than we are comment from Chris Greer.
Infamous.
This is a season where an off season where we signed Isaiah Wynn from the Patriots. Oh yeah, look at how smug we are. We're signing your failed second round pick, who did nothing, by the way, because he was hurt. And then we signed Aaron Brewer, who
phenomenal center,
the best center we've had since Mike Pouncey. Easy.
Not even close.
I don't know that that's
well,
saying much.
Actually, I disagree. He's the second best because Connor Williams at center was a Pro Bowler, I believe, when he was healthy.
Didn't get to see that long enough, though.
Right.
I'm
just saying from an accolade standpoint. I mean, I would put Connor Williams slightly above, if you will. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but Aaron Brewer is phenomenal.
But that's the thing to kind of look at, though, is it's not only who did we sign, but who did we not sign, right? We decided not to sign Connor Williams, right? We decided not to sign Robert Hunt. We let him get paid.
Yeah.
up in Carolina. And, and then we decided not to sign Christian Wilkins. So, like, all of our depth on the lines is just poof,
Evaporated. Yeah.
right? And then we try to fill it with other names who are just nobodies, right? I mean, we re-signed Robert Jones to all of our hatred at that point. And that was the moves for 2024. 3 guys.
Yeah. I think what
And
I
we
think
drafted Patrick Paul to be fair.
well, yeah, to be fair. And who was the guy? Is it Kendall Lamb?
Kendall Lamb
Right.
signed a year prior, yeah.
A year prior. So I mean he was okay too. But like, I think this was the height of this regime all up in their feels about how good they are. Right. Right. This was the year and the year after we broke like records on the offense and put up crazy stats and did all these crazy things. And that's where the infamous comment came from, was that offseason after we signed after Tyreek Hill's first year. And I think they just were kind of in their own feels and were truly feeling like they couldn't make a wrong decision. Right. So
I mean, in their mind, their ideology that if the quarterback got rid of the ball fast enough, you didn't need a good offensive line worked until it didn't. Which was last year.
Yeah. Right. Until Tua got injured. Because there's no other
quarterback. Tua was in, right?
Yeah.
The Jaguars game was atrocious.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. And I think the good news here is that it sounds like they're going to every offseason. We said this on the show, right? We said this at the beginning of our time together, right? When we were analyzing last offseason.
Oh, yeah.
We said that this team overcorrects every single year. This team finds an area or two, linebacker, wide receiver, defensive tackle, that kind of stuff. and just signs 19 freaking players, right, at one position in the hopes that a blind squirrel can find a nut. And in this case, I have everything that we're hearing and everything that we're reading leads me to believe that this offensive line problem should no longer be a problem, that we are going to attack it from free agency with youth, with, even advanced veterans, if I'm trying to be polite about their age. And then, maybe even in the draft, and we're just going to shotgun this and hope to God we hit something. And, it'll be interesting. It really will be interesting. Trends from an offensive line standpoint over the last five years, even in this 3 years so far with this regime, has not been positive. I think if they can hammer this one out, I think we're in really good position.
Yeah. And I think that's what we want to look at though, right? Like, so if we're trying to guesstimate, what's Miami going to do in free agency? We have to look at what position needs to be overcorrected. I think, to me, the safety room stands out, right?
Well, I mean, overcorrection would entail that you have something there.
But that's what they did last year, right? So we lose Christian Wilkins, and they signed, I was wrong, it's 8. They signed 8 defensive tackles. If it wasn't for Calais Campbell, like, semi coming out of retirement to be like, yeah, I'll play with you guys, we would have been screwed.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Sealer's and maybe Deshaun Hand were Sealer isn't all. I mean, I love Sealer. Yeah. I think he's a warrior, but outside of him.
But look at these names, right? So like Tier Tart, Isaiah Mack, Davion Nixon, Deshaun Hand, Jonathan Harris, Neville Gallimore, Benito Jones.
Yeah, of that entire list, Deshaun Hand was the best one.
Right, easy.
Right, yeah. Outside of Campbell and Sealer.
But Sealer was already on a team. But so we had one defensive tackle, literally on the roster. I think last year we only had Sealer. That's insane. So they signed 8 defensive tackles. So could we see that in the safety room this year?
We will see the safety version of that, right? Sure. Which is probably, signed 3 players in free agency, draft 1, maybe 2, probably draft 1, and then pick 1 or 2 up as undrafted free agents, have 5 going into camp and let the best 3 win. That's kind of how I see that happening.
Okay.
Which that's a lot of safeties, right, for a roster, right?
Only 3 of them will make it if history tells us
exactly.
Anything.
Yeah. I think safety. I think offensive line. Right. Those are the 2 areas that I can see this regime now looking at and saying, "Oh, you know what? We screwed the pooch. We need to. We have 0 players in one room, and we have horrible players and oft injured players in the other. We need to fix this." Right. So I could see something like, us signing 8 offensive linemen instead of defensive tackles this year, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of safeties in free agency. We talked about, Talanoa Hufanga. We talked about Trayvon Morig, right? I wouldn't be surprised if like one of those big name safeties is on the docket for day one, and then one big name, potentially two big name offensive linemen are on the docket for day one. Yeah, they got to convince people though, right? That like last year it was easy to convince free agents. We come off an 11-6 season where Tua and the offense are breaking records, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to convince people to come play for you when that's the case. But like this year, we saw turmoil, right?
Yeah.
Tua goes down again. The team collapses. The coaches are disheveled on the sideline more often than not. Tyreek Hill at the end of the season is quits at halftime and throws a hissy fit after the game against a division rival, no less. Like these are things that are in the public eye that free agents are looking at, right? And they're like, well, I don't want to go play with that diva, right? Like, why would I want to do that? He's obviously not about winning. He's about himself and him getting his numbers. Or the coaches don't even know what they're doing. They couldn't keep it together on the sideline. Like he doesn't even look like he's just staring into space. He has no idea what he's doing, right? So like, it's a different animal this year.
Yeah, and I will say that there is a silver. I'm a silver linings kind of guy. I think everyone on the show knows that, right? I mean, I'll find some silver lining in a shitstorm, and you can if you're an offensive guard or an offensive lineman. We'll use the safeties in the offensive line, right? I mean, we have other needs, and we'll talk about those momentarily. But
sure.
If I'm a safety, I'll start with safeties. If I'm a safety, I'm looking at Wheeler put together a top, I think he was at the end of the year was a top 6 defense in this league. I think from like all key metrics, if I'm not mistaken.
I think from a yardage perspective,
whatever it was, right? I mean,
I don't remember. I don't remember.
It was a top defense, right? It was a well sought out defense, and this coach was hot on the head coaching. He's coming back. It's the second year of his defense. If I'm a player that gets reached out to, I know that room has 0 players in it, right? So they're reaching out to me because they know for a fact I'm going to be a fit, that I am who they are going after. So the 49er safety who I hope to God we figure out a way to sign, right?
Yeah, I love him.
I'm not going to try to butcher his name
because he does fit. He does fit.
He does.
Year.
He really does.
Perfect.
Armando with the fucking home run on this one, right? I mean, top
and
injured.
We're hoping for him. That's the ironic part. Is
Yep.
that we're just broken as Dolphins fans.
But I mean, the good news with that is, right? And again, I know this is such a Chris Greer move, is that he's 5 years in the league. We'll talk about him later, but played for just under $1 million last year. So he won't cost a lot of money if we can sign him, which is great.
You could throw him like $3 million a year and he'd be pumped, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, and if you're on the offensive line, you're like, hey, okay, well, they had a down year. Their offensive line is hot garbage outside of a handful of players. Teron Armstead probably is retiring. I can come in and make a mark, right? I can play. Yeah. I can play here. And if I can do my part to get this team back to where they were 2 years ago, then when my next contract comes up, I'm either staying with this team and getting a buttload of money, or I'm going out and hitting free agency with a resume that can double or triple what I'm getting what I'm getting paid right now. I mean, so there's positives. There's a positive way of spinning this. There's a negative way of spinning this. I really do think it's just about fit.
Yeah. And I mean, to the silver lining standpoint, I mean, maybe we're fed up with the coach because we see the coach every day. These guys coming in don't see the coach every day,
right?
And what they do see though is the NFLPA report cards, which the Dolphins have just crushed 3 years in a row. We've been the number 1 team that players said are like we're the best team to play for according to the players 3 years in a row
in every category.
In every category,
we are we are number 1 in every category.
And if you're not familiar with the NFLPA report card, it's an anonymous report card sent to the players. Nearly 75% of the players respond to this thing, and it asks you to rate your team based on a number of factors. So, how does the team treat your family? How is the travel
accommodations?
Accommodations. Like how's the food at the facility, right? How's the gym? How does the owner treat you? How does the coach treat you? And the Dolphins generally get A+ across the board.
We've been one, we were 2 3 years. We were number 2 3 years ago. We've been 1 for the last 2 years. Yeah. So I mean, that'll play a big part too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I wish companies had a report card like that when I'm going out there to look for a job.
No shit.
You're just gonna tell me how good you are? That's great.
Well, and I think it's big that it's anonymous by the players, right? And so it's not one of those things where it's like, in our everyday life, it's like, of course the company's going to say they're great.
Right.
You know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
like I think the percentage is huge too, because the Pro Bowl, the players vote in the Pro Bowl too, but only like 30 something percent of them, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whereas in this is 75%. That's a huge percentage of players.
Hmm.
So that's great. All right. So I had one other trend. I don't know if you have any other trends you want to talk
I
about, but
don't.
I think
Nope. All you.
one other trend that we cannot leave this podcast without talking about, and that is Greer. It's not so much Greer because he's been around before this, but McDaniel's need for speed.
All right, Top Gun. All right, Maverick.
Listen, Mike McDaniel, since he has come here 3 years ago, has added speed to virtually every single position. If you go through the free agency signings and then you ask the AI to generate trends for you, right? AI inevitably will say, hey, this team really likes adding speed because we've signed just speed after speed after speed. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, who out there is fast, right? Who are the fast guys that are catching the eye of Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer this offseason? Well, somebody like Josh Sweat, who arguably only had one good season, but we could use an edge rusher, and he's a fast edge rusher. Could he kind of catch their eye, right? What about in the safety room, right? Who's the fast guys back there, right? Do they consider like maybe DJ Reed and moving him to safety? I have no idea. But like when I'm keying in on guys that I seeing as Miami potentially signing,
Mhm.
I'm like going to Madden and seeing what their speed rating is.
What it was their 40 in the combine. I don't care how old they are. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, they're 37. They probably still run a 4.3, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, right? And I think that is a trend that I'm hoping we buck in this offseason, right? I get you can't teach speed, you can't teach height, you can't teach, hand size and all arm length and all that stuff that are key indicators key successful indicators at a lot of positions. But how about we target talent instead of speed? I mean, here's a wild idea, right?
It's not,
Um,
listen, no, we're going to go out. We're going to sign Justin Fields. Okay. He's going to have his own package. And he's just going to he's going to run all over the place.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I get it. Speed is fun, right? But how many times during the season did Keith and Taylor after he joined the show say, this team is like a Ferrari in a snowstorm. I'm using my term just because it's on the top of my head. I get it. Speed is fun. Speed is great. Speed is awesome, right? It's a mismatch, kind of indicator. But at a certain point, I'd rather you be 0.2 seconds slower on your 40, but have it up here because that will make up for that difference and you'll be a better player for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to Armando's point and your point, Josh, speed doesn't work late in the year. And it's true. It's been true.
Yep.
Even in our listen, we've had 3 seasons with Mike, and last year was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
His first season was decent. His second year, I would say, was his best year. Right? I think not many people would argue that. And even then, with 3 or 4 opportunities to win the division, we couldn't get it done.
Yeah,
the team just
and I know this isn't always the case, but I think it is a fair blanket statement to say on a show like this. What do you equate speed to from a body type?
small guys, yeah.
Right. And what do you equate to needing to from a longevity standpoint to sustain your body throughout the season? You need mass. You need to be a bigger guy,
Yep.
right? And so you stack this team with speed, great. But what happens when you're Pat White and you get laid out by who the hell was the Pittsburgh safety? He does a podcast. No, he does a podcast now. Ryan.
Oh, Clark.
Yeah. Where you're Pat White and you get your spleen kicked out of the back of your body because you're 4'2", 104 pounds soaking wet.
And to Armando's point, December weather cancels out that speed. You need fundamentals and guys who can play the game without relying on their speed.
Armando coming in with the good takes.
Armando's hot right now. He's on it. He's on fire. Welcome back, Armando. I definitely recognize your name. You've been here before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome back, man. All right. So last thing we want to talk about in free agency, our free agency wish list. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, Josh, keep me honest there. We talked about what type of players we wanted and what our biggest needs were for the Miami Dolphins, right?
Yeah, let me go over those needs real quick. So our needs were
it.
often offensive line, but more specifically offensive guards.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in no specific order. Defensive tackle, safety, and obviously a backup QB, right? And you could throw in wide receiver 3, but that was kind of lower on the list.
Right. Yeah, wide receiver 3, I feel like is just something they can
they need to address, but it's something they
can find it somewhere, right? Not overly worried about it. All right, we talked about offensive line a lot, so let's start there again.
Mm-hmm.
Are there guys in free agency? A few weeks ago, we talked about some names, right? But that was a few weeks ago, and as this part of the NFL season, everything moves very quickly.
It sure does.
So are the names we talked about a few weeks ago still as relevant today as guys we would desire bringing in as they were then?
Well, I have on my list, I have 2 offensive guards that I really like for this team, right? Sure. One of which was on my list. Was it a week or 2 ago? In Mekhi Becton.
The other guy was on my list. So
was he really?
Was,
all right. Yeah. So why don't you talk about James Daniels first?
All right, yeah. So James Daniels was on my list, and my criteria for looking at offensive linemen, because I am not an NFL scout, and what the hell do I know, is has the guy played significant snaps? Has he played for a good offensive line? And is he on the younger side, be it under 30? And James Daniels ticks all of those boxes.
I want him so bad.
He's a free agent. Josh, great notes here. Versatile guard known for his pass blocking skills. God, do we need that, right?
Yes, we do.
If we can convince him, if we can get in his ear before the Steelers do, because they are very convincing, right? Maybe we can convince him to come to South Florida. Hey, man, you don't need any of that cold weather, right? You want the warm weather all year round. And you want to play for a team that's on the up and up and could potentially win a Super Bowl. And we could, our guys can sell it.
Yeah, and I think really the conversation with James is, okay, because word on the street is Pittsburgh is leaning into Justin Fields, right? So do you want to go back to Justin Fields or do you want to come play for Tua? And I know a lot of our fans are not Tua fans. I get it. I am. Players are fans of his. Yeah. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you, right?
Players love to.
It is what it is. He's a nice guy. He's great on the field when he's on the field. And I understand that it's when. But if you can bring somebody like James Daniels, 27 years old, been in the league 7 years, and pay him a little bit more than what I'm assuming will be a little bit more than what he played around last year, which do you have that number in front of you? I don't remember.
8.8.
8.8. Okay. So last year's contract average was 8.8.
I'd give him 11. I'd give him 12.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. James Daniels at 27 years old, being as good as he is in pass blocking, I think he could command 10 to 12. And that would be very palatable and a very good deal for the Dolphins, right? Make it, front heavy. So you have some reprieve on the back end. And I think he's a great signing. I really do.
So tell me about Mekhi Becton. I've heard this name before. I feel like he's been in our division.
Yep. He failed miserably as a tackle for the Jets. I mean, just not good, right? Nope. And then he went over to Philly, Philly is great. They have a great solid coaching staff. They're good at reclamation projects, for lack of a better term, and they moved him to guard, right? And like I said, he was initially a tackle. Philly moved him to guard, and what he showcased at guard was adaptability. Jesus, can't say that 5 times fast. And like just pure tackle strength, but in a phone booth, right? And with he's only 25 years old. He's been in the league 5 years, so he's seen a lot of things, right? He knows what defensive tackles and what kind of 3 techniques and stuff like that are going to do to try to get around him. But with his strength and his arm length and his mobility, right? His athleticism sets him up to be a great guard, right? And where James Daniels is better, in my opinion, at pass blocking. I mean, I don't think that's an opinion. I think that's that's facts. Mekhi excels for me, he's better at the run, right? So if we were to bring in both of these guards, for example, you put James Daniels next to, what will be a second player in Patrick Paul, assuming Teron Armstead's not back. And then you put Becton next to, Austin Jackson coming back from injury. And all of a sudden, this offensive line looks amazing. And that doesn't even count. If we draft a guard high, then Becton is our 5th, or would be our first off the bench. So number 6, right?
I kind of feel more comfortable with that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, me too, right? I mean, in a perfect world, but if we're going to hit free agency hard, that means that we don't have to spend a top 2 draft pick, which, spoiler alert, in my personal mock draft, which we will go over later on in the season, I don't have us going offensive line in round 1, which I'm sure is a huge, horrible mistake by a lot of people, but we'll address it later.
Well, all the mock drafts nowadays have all the linemen going before us. It's not our fault. Listen, all right. So my question here is, and I always wonder this, right, from more of the player perspective, is like if you go to a team after you have had a absolute horrid career, right? You went to the Jets as a highly drafted, I believe he was a first round pick.
Yeah, he was like number 5 or something. Yeah, like overall,
you failed, and I don't know if it was you or the coaching staff or the environment.
It was the Jets.
Whatever, right? Then you go to Philadelphia. They revitalize your career. You win a Super Bowl with them. I gotta feel like they have the most influence as to like whether or not he re-signs there, because like you have to feel like they helped me so much. I want to give them the first shot, right?
Yeah. Well, word on the street is he approached them. Word on the street. I don't even know who I am.
What are you? Who are you?
I don't even know.
What year is it?
Reports have been made, right? Word on the street, yo. Reports have been made that towards the end of the season last year that his team, right, his people approached Philly about locking him up long term, and they opted to let him test free agency. Okay. Right. So that could leave a little bit of a sour taste in his mouth. And he played for $2.7 million last year. So my assumption would be, based on winning a Super Bowl and actually being a starting guard on a Super Bowl winning team, who showed out very well, he's probably going to be more in the 6, 8, 9 range.
Such a power play by the Eagles, though, because they can be like, hey, go see what you're worth. And he can come back to them and be like, hey, so-and-so offered me 6.5. And they're like, okay, we'll give you 7. Right. Yeah. Like they have
or they offered me 7, but we'll give you 6 and your family doesn't have to move.
Right. Right. Yeah. Throw in incentives, right? Like if Saquon Barkley rushes for 1,000 yards, you get a $500,000 bonus, which is easy money.
Yeah. He'll do that by week 4. But, so, I mean, look, I think James Daniels is probably, in my opinion, more realistic than Mekhi Becton. If we're looking just at these, there are other names for those that are listening. There are a ton of free agent guards. Yeah. These two, in our opinion, and Anthony, I don't mean to speak for you, but I would assume that you feel the same way.
Top guy, yes.
Yeah, like these are some of our top guys that realistically are achievable, right? Because what I don't want to happen is for us to go and sign, and God, I miss him, but like $100 million contract for a guard. Right. I'm sorry. Like there isn't one on the market that's worth it unless we trade for him and then we re-sign him. Right. But
so the next position, I wanted to talk about was defensive tackle.
Yes.
And in here, you reached for the stars on this one, right? Because James Daniels, in most of the free agency top 100s, he's towards middle of the pack, towards 40s and 50s and something like that. He's not, he's not up there. But your boy Milton Williams here, he's at the top of this defensive tackle list.
Yeah. He's my dream.
And it's funny again because you had Milton Williams, I believe, previously, and I had Osa previously, and Osa has of course re-signed. We talked about that already with Dallas. So now our favorite guy here to sign would be Milton Williams, but I have a feeling he would demand some cash.
Yeah, I mean he's coming off. I mean Milton Williams, right? 5 sacks in consecutive seasons. 26 years old, 4 or 5 years in the league. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but he only played for $1.2 million last year. Right.
Probably rookie contract still, right?
Yeah. I think this is his second big contract. This is his first big contract, right? This is his second contract, but first big one. And he's going to command quite a lot of money. I mean, I could see him in the 12 to 14 range per year. Now, is that a little more? Is that a little more than I care to spend? Sure.
I think you're underplaying it there.
You think it's going to be more?
I think if Osa got 20, he's getting 20 at least.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, then I'm definitely out. Pay him. Yeah, then I'm definitely out. But like, I want him so bad because his big ass next to Zach Sealer would just, be awesome. It would be amazing. And the good thing about it is he's only 26 years old. I forgot how old Sealer is, but they'd be able to grow together, right? And there'd be longevity, because what I don't, and for those that are watching, you guys are, I'm hoping you guys are noticing a trend that Anthony and I are painting, right? This picture on is youth, younger players, right? And Anthony, I know you mentioned it at the top of the segment, but under 30, because what we don't want to continue happen, which understanding where we were in the life cycle of this kind of iteration of the Dolphins, you sign what you can, right? Players that you think are going to help you, which means over 30. I'm tired of it. This team needs to have an influx of youth into this team at various key positions so that we're not every year churning and burning. We have players that are ingrained in their position in the city, on this team, with this scheme, so that they can grow their careers and hopefully get a second contract from us if they play well. And Milton Williams is one of those, man, where at 20, I'm out, right? But anywhere in that 12 to 15 range, if we can say, hey, taxes are better in Florida, right?
I mean, truthfully, I think, it's Super Bowl winning player. Osa just signed for 20, so his team is going to see that, and they're going to be like, well, our guy did just as well.
I just think Osa is a better player, though. If I'm being honest.
I personally do too, but I've definitely seen from the pundits they're split on this, right? They're split on it, and if they're split on it, that means teams are split on it. So that means there's going to be teams who want to pay him. Which leaves us looking at guys like Tershawn Wharton in Kansas City, who had a good season, but just one good season. That's always risky, right?
And this is a position, spoiler alert, that I really do think Miami's going to hit in the draft. So I mean,
if Mason Graham's there at 13, bro.
I gotta be honest with you. Mason Graham has been my pick at 13 for months, and he is no longer my pick at 13. Spoiler alert.
Because you suck.
I know. I know. There's just a better player at a key position that we need. That's in a weaker class this year, right? Of meaning it's more top heavy. So I think they're a really good defensive. I think this is a really good defensive tackle draft. So I could definitely see it.
Yeah, so Armando's saying, if we get a good defense, we keep the offense. The offense can run down the clock if the defense can hold up. And I think last year we saw little bits and pieces of that. At the beginning of the season, the defense most definitely held us into games.
Oh yeah.
And then once Tua came back, we started to see injuries on defense, and it kind of flipped. And we started to see vice versa there.
Yep.
The Scatterbo replaced.
Oh my God! I don't want him to. I don't want to replace Ingold, but my Lord, I would sell. I don't have kids, but if I did, they could go for Scatterbo.
Listen, I can already see us getting into the mock draft to the draft already. So let's get through free agency first. So we have two more positions we need to talk about. That's safety and the backup quarterback. We've talked a little bit about safety already, especially this one guy, Talanoa Hufanga from San Francisco. He's had some injury history. Some injury history. Most of his career has been injury history.
The Chris Greer special.
Yeah. He's had one, but the one season he played, it was a special season, like where he played the full season. He had an amazing season. He's 26 years old. He's been in the league for 5 years. His rookie deal just ended where he was making less than $1 million a year.
Yeah, I think it was like $998 or change. Yeah.
So you got a guy, like, as long as, if San Francisco doesn't want him back, hey, we have our staff that's mostly from San Francisco. Perhaps you want to come down to South Florida.
And I think he has a pre-existing relationship with McDaniel too, right? And I'll tell you what, man. I know. I can already hear the jokes in the eye rolls. Like, oh, this is such a Chris Greer move. Sign a guy, give him $5 to $8 million. He's going to get hurt after 3 games. Sure, he could, but he could also not. And we need safeties, and this dude is talented when he's on the field.
What do we said about our team the past few shows? We are a glass cannon, so you may as well just keep building the glass cannon.
Yeah, just lean into it, fella.
Listen, I really love him. I don't think we need to say much more about him. He's a fan. If you haven't, if you're not familiar with him, I forget what year it was. I don't know if you have it, Josh, but go look up his highlights from his amazing season. He was a baller.
Yeah, I think it was in 2
years ago.
Yeah, 2022, 2023, something like that.
Yeah.
Where
the other guy you have on this list,
insane.
Yeah, the other guy you have on this list is a familiar name, big name coming out of the draft quite a few years ago now, 7 years ago. I can't believe it. Jesus.
It's wild, isn't that? When I found that, I was like, Jesus, I'm old.
Absolutely crazy. I can't believe. So Justin Reed from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's 28 years old now. He's been in the league for 7 years. I can't believe that. Yeah, $10.5 million last year, though. He's demanded some money. What are your thoughts on Justin Reed?
This is in free agency outside of James Daniels. This is the guy that I'm hoping for. I'm not saying he might price himself out, and I fully understand if that's the case. Rebuilding the secondary or the safety room.
It's a defensive secondary.
Yeah, true. But rebuilding the safety room with someone like Justin Reed, and then maybe drafting in the second round. If Malachi Starks falls, you maybe trade up or trade it back into the first, or trade up a little bit into the second to grab him. Or the and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the guy from Notre Dame who's really really good. I can't think of his name, but like this is the kind of player that you put in. You know, he thrives in coverage and in run support, so he's a do everything guy. Mm-hmm. You plug him in the back, and he's your kind of Kyle Hamilton type, kind of Swiss Army knife.
I believe is the.
Yeah, I think that's what his name is.
The safety, yeah.
Yep, or one of them. They have two that are really good. For those that are listening, Notre Dame safeties, both of them are really good.
That's the one that PFF has listed at the top. The other guy might be a corner. He's not listed as safety.
We'll talk about it. I can't remember. I got to look. But yeah, Justin Reed, man, I'll tell you what. You add him to a team with, and I know you're not a huge fan, but Ramsey, maybe another corner, Cater.
Yeah, we'll have the all 2015 team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Justin Reed's a baller, man. I'll tell you what.
It'll be great in 2025.
Yeah. Year 8.
We're behind the times here. We're chasing the unicorn.
Yeah, we're throwing on the Letterman jacket from high school and living in the past. But the backup quarterback, right? And I know. Sorry, do you have anything else to add on Reed?
No, I'm definitely hesitant on guys like that. I mean, he reminds me very much of Ramsey, to be honest. Which, you know, a lot of flash. Reed has more substance, I think, has more recent substance than I think Ramsey has. Mm-hmm. But yeah, safety room, I'm definitely intrigued by.
Yeah, I'll be real curious to see how they end up rebuilding that. My gut is going to say that it's going to be a higher priced free agent, mm-hmm. and then a high draft pick,
because they have to stabilize the position with at least one guy.
Right? Yeah, you can't rely on 2 rookies back there. That's a recipe for disaster.
Before we jump to backup quarterbacks, so welcome to the show, Luat Tron. The first time I've seen this name, I don't know, Josh, if you recognize it, but welcome to the show, dude. Yeah, don't let I mean, you can't get through this league without throwing it, man. You got to throw it sometimes.
Yeah.
Offensive line will help with that.
For sure.
Bad weather games, like we want to run first, sure, but like towards the end of the season, we couldn't run at all because
we couldn't do anything.
Couldn't block. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining the show, dude. I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we're going to jump into backup.
It might be a lady. We don't know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We shouldn't assume.
Could be. Speaking of quarterbacks, though, we got backup quarterback as our fourth biggest need here before we jump into the mock draft roundup. So backup quarterback was a point of contention last year. We lost Tua again for a very large chunk of the season. Mm-hmm. We had Mike White took snaps. Tim Boyle took snaps. Tyler Huntley took snaps. Skylar Thompson took snaps. We had 5 quarterbacks play last year, and only one of them was good. So we need to find someone. Listen, backup quarterbacks aren't inherently very good. That's why they're backup quarterbacks. But we need to find somebody who's better than the third string UFL players that we had out there last year.
Yeah, you know, and for me, you know, where we had backup quarterback kind of as the 4th bucket on our list that we're looking at for those that are reading or listening. I think backup quarterback's actually probably one of the top of the list in my opinion, right? Mm. We need to address it and we need to throw money at it, right? Because we can no longer be the team that, to your point, signs, you know, California Polytech A&M's, you know, drummer boy to be our backup quarterback.
I'm so surprised we didn't sign a UFL quarterback last year. I know I was saying that in jest, but like seriously, we signed everybody. Like AJ McCarron, I'm sure you're free. You want to come play?
What are you doing?
Hey
Marino, strap it up, buddy. Let's go.
Yeah. Right. By the way, McCarron is like the best quarterback in the UFL. That's why I said it.
Is he really?
Yeah,
no, he's not.
He plays for the Battlehawks. Yeah.
Well, all right, good for him. Found a little niche. You know, but you know, I do think that if you look at the end of the offseason, Miami should be, and my assumption will be, in the top 5 for highest paid backup quarterbacks, right? And I don't think that is what I mean by that is we should be throwing a substantial amount of money to one player, not shotgunning it and giving 5 players $1 million. Let's give one player $6 million. You know what I mean?
Right.
As a backup. And I had 2 names kind of on the top of my list. I'm sure some fans may or may not agree with this, and they might have their own go after Sam Darnold or whatever the case is, which is unrealistic. But I have seen comments about go after Sam Darnold. For me, it's Gardner Minshew or Marcus Mariota, right? I think Mariota would probably be my choice of those two, just from a simple fact that, he has experience. He probably won't cost an insane amount of money. He's got a ton of starting experience. He's athletic. It's, he can provide reliable depth to a team that needs a viable quarterback to be successful, right? And yes, to Armando's point here, we said it on the show when he got injured. If your starting quarterback that's getting $30-40 million goes down, you're screwed regardless. Getting a veteran quarterback in the building that has even a quasi decent resume and his experience at least sets you up to maybe win 2 of those 4 games instead of going 0-4 or going 1-3. We go 2-2, and hey, by the end of the season, that one game might make a difference. And Gardner Minshew was in the Super Bowl, I believe, at some point with the Eagles, wasn't? Or am I thinking of Nick Foles? Am I mixing up Gardner Minshew and Nick Foles? Whatever.
Yeah, that was Foles. Yep. He did make the playoffs, I believe, in his rookie season with the Jaguars. So.
Yeah, I mean, but he's been around forever, right? Yeah. So he's seen it all, right? Those are the kind of players, right? You're not going to go break the bank and sign the best free agent quarterback to be your backup because nobody's going to want to do that. But you get somebody like Marcus Mariota with some experience. In my opinion, it at least sets the room up to have some experience should Tua go down again.
I want Jameis, bro. I'm on the Jameis train.
I mean, hey, I'm a Florida State grad, so Jameis all day.
Give me a guy who can sling it, who's not as scared to throw it. That was the biggest problem last year. We got a bunch of guys who were scared to throw it. Yeah. And then they didn't have the body types to take the hits, which our offensive line were really letting them have.
Oh, well, yeah,
Poor
for
Tyler
sure.
Huntley.
And you could probably entice him to come because he's a Publix crab legs guy. So
there you go.
Which for those that don't know, in college, he got caught stealing crab legs from Publix, and it was a big giant joke in Tallahassee.
And in the draft, he ended up buying, he had a whole display of crab legs at the draft. I remember that. Yeah. I think backup quarterback, I think a lot of us were big fans of Andy Dalton. He re-signs with Carolina Panthers. Yep. So, he's off the table already. I think at some point, a lot of us were fans of Joe Flacco, and then he really kind of laid an egg last year.
Yeah.
So he might be done.
Was he like 48?
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's a hard pass. I've also seen us trying to bring back Tyrod Taylor. Like, no thanks. I'm off of that train fully.
Teddy Bridgewater, no thank you.
No, hard pass. I'm not saying they would because this would require a interconference trade, but I would really love for us to somehow get our hands on Milton, the backup quarterback.
Like, why would they though, right?
I know, but
it makes no sense for them to do that.
He was one of my favorite players coming out of Tennessee, and he is the polar opposite of Tua. He's big, he's fast, and he's got a howitzer attached to his shoulder. And he's rotting on the bench, so at least come and do it in somewhere sunny, right? Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like, the Browns tried to do that with Dorian Thompson-Robinson too, and that just really didn't work out for them.
Yikes.
And they ended up making like Jameis like that was a whole weird situation.
I don't know. It was odd.
Show. We don't need to talk about them.
Nope.
All right. So backup quarterback, obviously high on the needs list. I don't think I'd put it 1. I'm probably putting guard and safety in there.
Yeah, sure.
But it's definitely high up on the list. Everybody, let us know your thoughts. We talked a lot here, so let's go over what we just talked about. There's a lot of free agency trends with Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel. Like, they like speed. They like to sign offensive linemen, just so happens they haven't signed the right offensive lineman. They don't like to sign their own players who become really good after they draft them. They just let them walk regularly. They like speed. I know I said that one already. I'm just repeating it.
Do it again. Say it again. Really Say it for those in the back.
Oh, speed. They got
speed.
Yeah, cool.
With a
they
capital
really
S.
like speed. So we're going to draft the fastest offensive lineman. Go back, watch the combine. Whoever's at the top of the 40-yard dash, that's who we're drafting.
Right Armand Membu.
Yeah.
He won't be there when we pick.
To us.
No.
Yeah, so let us know in the chat. Let us know in the comments on the video who are your free agent wish list. Who's your needs? Like, what are your top needs for the Dolphins?
Mm-hmm.
And what trends have you noticed with this coaching staff that maybe we could use to see what the Dolphins do starting March 13th here for the NFL free agency period? All right, Josh. I know you've been waiting for this segment.
Oh yeah,
For the entire night, for 1 hour and 10 minutes, you have been on the edge of your seat, waiting for.
I'm a draft guy, man. I love mock drafts.
Roundup. All right, everybody. So what we have done here is we have gone around the internet, around the globe, around the whole entire universe, and found all the mock drafts for the Miami Dolphins at pick 13. We're also going to talk a little. We have a few mock drafts with the second round too. We're going to talk about that. We actually have mock drafts that are all 7 rounds, but we don't need to talk about that yet. We got a few weeks. We got a few weeks.
Simmer down.
So we'll see. We're gonna take a look at who people are mocking to the Miami Dolphins in the first 2 rounds. And Josh, being such a nerd when it comes to this stuff, I am really just gonna feed him questions about guys, and he's gonna give us the deets on why this is a good selection, why this would be a bad selection, or if he doesn't want to do that, who is this person and why is he in the first round? That's a better one, right?
Yep. And I think if it's okay with you and everyone watching, I think for those that we have like all 7 rounds, let's hit like maybe the first 2 or 3 picks, right? So the first 2 or
the first 2 days rounds is fine, I think. First 2 days. All right. First mock draft comes from Merrick Brave of the Phinsider. This is also a Dolphins fan site. He did a 7-round mock draft. We'll talk about the first 3 rounds. So he has us starting off with a corner, Will Johnson out of Michigan. In the second round, he has us going wide receiver Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. And in the third round, a tight end, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. Josh, there ain't no freaking lineman in these first 3 picks. What is going on?
Yeah, and just a caveat. So we're going to be covering 4 mock drafts. The first 2 were pre-combine. So we understand that Will Johnson might have moved up, might have moved down based on combine stats. But honestly, this is, as much as I don't want to admit this, this is kind of how I see a draft going for us. I don't see us potentially attacking offensive line in with the first round pick, even though it's a real popular choice, right? And it makes sense. I mean, obviously it depends on who falls, but Will Johnson out of Michigan is a stud. I mean, we're talking, he's a baller, right? He's the best cornerback in the draft, in my opinion. And I have him as a top 10 player on my top 100 big board. You know, his best position obviously is that outside man press cornerback. He is 92 percentile in his position group in height. He's 96 percentile in 40 time. He ran a 4.3 at the combine, and he's like 6'1", I think, or something like that. He held opposing quarterbacks while at Michigan to 41.5% QBR last year, 85% in coverage, 75 percentile in zone, and 82 percentile in man press. This dude does everything. He is probably would be our number 2. Should we have drafted him, or should we draft him? But will be our eventual number 1. This guy is a stud. Trey Harris is the epitome of what we need on this team, right? He's from Ole Miss. He's an outside X receiver. He's 6'2", 205. He was 84th. Yeah,
he's about that magic number.
Yep. And he's fast, right? 84 percentile in the vert, meaning there were very few players better than him in the vert. He jumped 38.7. Helped his quarterback maintain 143 QBR when targeted. That's outstanding. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's amazing.
As an outside X receiver. And he was 90 percentile or better in short routes, intermediate routes, deep routes. And he was just under 70 percentile in blocking, which
6'2" what? 6'2" what?
205.
205. What is this? What was his 40? Do we know?
I don't have it off the top of my head. It was
I
think it was like 4.4 something, like just under 4.5. Yeah. Yep. Now, you know, he's 205. You put him in an NFL strength and conditioning program, his playing weight's probably 215, right?
Yeah. 210, 215, something like
that. And Arroyo out of Miami, the tight end. I mean, he's an inline kind of a multi-tool type tight end. He's 6'5", 250, so big dude, right? Think Durham Smythe-esque.
Oh, good.
He's got a massive wingspan. I mean, huge wingspan. He ran 4.69, so just under 4.7 in the 40 at 6'5", 250. I mean, that's outstanding. And he was, of all the tight ends in the draft, he was 85th percentile in deep routes rather, and just over 80 percentile in intermediate routes.
I gotta say, so I don't have a problem with these players. They all sound amazing.
They're all
They're all top of their position, it seems.
Well, top-ish, right?
Top-ish.
Arroyo, I think, is tight end 3 or 4. But
I mean, tight end 3 or 4 in the third round is pretty good, right?
Yep.
But if we go 3 rounds without drafting an offensive lineman,
you might have a coronary.
There's no free agent offensive linemen that are good enough to justify not taking an offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds. I would probably rage quit the live show that we're doing on the draft.
Yeah. Yep.
But listen, so I mean, he does to give him his due. He takes it doesn't take. I can't even give him due. He doesn't take an offensive line
until the 7th round. Or 5th? Is it? Oh yeah, the tackle.
Yeah, Jalen Rivers in the 5th round. Then he takes Xavier Truss in the 7th round
out of Georgia. Yeah, this is a bad mock. I'm not a fan of this mock. I like the first pick. I think Will Johnson on this team would be lights out. But other than that,
we're moving on. So we're focusing on first round picks. That's Will Johnson in the first round. Is not the only person who has mocked that. Actually, somebody in our chat mocked that a few weeks ago when we were talking about this.
Yeah, I forgot who it was, but I mean, that's a real popular pick.
If you're out there and you were the one, comment on this video. We want to hear from you because you may be right. And we know we're crazy, so that's fine. All right, so this next mock comes from Josh Liskovitz of PFF.
Not it.
And he did something really cool, is that he picked kind of like an offensive lineman in each of the first 2 rounds.
Yeah. Now, again, caveat being
pre-combine.
This is pre-combine, so there is no possible way that either of these players.
Don't say.
There's no. I'm sorry.
There's always a way. Where there's there's a way.
Hey,
Josh.
Unless we start sending bong videos of Armand Membu,
we could do it. We could do it. It's the internet age, baby. We can do anything.
What? There's deep fakes. We're in deep fake country.
We got this. We got this. So let me just say the names before you dive in, because these are at least one of these names our listeners have heard before.
Yeah.
So Armand Membo, we have mentioned a couple times, right?
Stud. Yeah.
But this other one, Tyler Booker, I feel like we mentioned first weeks ago. Many weeks ago.
Yep.
Like at the end of the regular season, we were talking about him.
Yeah. Tyler Booker is that guy.
Yeah. So I would be shocked to see Tyler Booker there at 48, but I have to admit that watching the PFF guys do a live mock again today, they did another one today. They do one every couple days. He fell to the 2nd round again.
Yeah, he had a rough combine, right? And some apparent questionable interviews with some teams, but that doesn't take away from his talent, in my opinion, right? So, I mean, you look at Membu, I think he is the top offensive lineman in this draft now. I mean, this dude is like made in a lab, a super soldier, right? He's 6'4", 332. He's 97th percentile, meaning there's points like 0.00 worth of players as a whole on the offensive line that are better than him. So he's 97th percentile in the 40-yard dash at 6'4", 332, in the vert and in the broad jump. Now, for those that aren't super familiar with what that equates to, that means he's explosive. That means he's got lateral agility, and he's 90 percentile last year and 90 percentile in run blocking and 92 percentile in pass blocking.
So I need to ask now.
Hit me.
Because I love looking at the mock drafts at the end of the season, and then the mock drafts by the time we get to the combine, and especially right after the combine.
Yep.
Armand Membo wasn't in the top 10.
Nope. Armand Membo was like in the 20s.
At the end of last. Yeah, right. So, okay. Is the talent top 10, or is the talent more in the 20s and he's being risen up the board because of his combine?
The combine is helping, right? Because it's the underwear Olympics, but This dude right now is I would say top 10. He will not last past the Patriots, in my opinion, past 5.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I've seen that too.
This dude has the potential to be really good. I mean, really, really, really good. Round 2 guard. He is a true guard in Tyler Booker from Alabama. He's a left guard. Hey, works for me. We need one. We need a few. He's 6'5", 321. And because I'm from Connecticut, I thought this was a really cool stat that I was unaware of. He's actually from New Haven, Connecticut, so I'm kind of rooting for him.
There you go.
Yep. He's 93 percentile in hand size, 89 percentile last season in pass blocking, and 82 percentile run blocking. So obviously, if you compare it to Membu, he's a little less at both of the kind of key stats that you look for in a guard as far as pass blocking and run blocking. But this dude is a massive human, and he is quick. He's agile. He's got short burst. He's got massive hands, which is a great indicator for holding blocks and getting under the pads and really kind of being able to I have small hands, but like spread your palm on the chest of the defender that's rushing you to be able to push and to be able to manipulate. And, he could be fun. If he lasts the second round, brother, I'm telling you what, we better, and he's at our pick, we better be doing somersaults, backflips, and paper airplanes and shooting off some fireworks, because he would be a phenomenal pick for us in the second round if he's there.
Okay. So, yeah. Follow-up question.
Hit me.
This goes back to Armand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you turned your back on Kelvin Banks Jr.? I feels like you
a little bit.
Feels like because he was your boy.
I think at 13, I'd still take him. I think he's, his combine and some of his stuff. I think his pro day will be kind of the deciding factor for him. I think I liked his versatility. I still like his versatility. He played at a big college. He's really good at a lot of things. He's not a bad pick if we take him, right? I just don't think you take him at 13 with the players at other positions, right? If you are honed in at the offensive line, which I don't think we should hone in on any position, because that's how you reach. Sure. You take best player available, in my opinion, at need. Yeah, he'd be a great pick too.
Okay. All right. So the rest of the draft from Josh here on PFF, he took
not me,
not you, Josh Liskovitz. He took a defensive lineman, Josh Farmer, out of Florida State, a safety, Jonas Sanker, out of Virginia, cornerback, Dorian Strong. I've heard this name a lot, actually, lately.
Yeah.
Out of Virginia Tech. Edge rusher, Savion Jones, out of LSU. Another offensive lineman in the 5th round. Love that. Out of Cincinnati, John Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 7th round, we have 3 picks. So Rock Taylor out of Memphis. He's a wide receiver.
Love that pick.
Running back, Jordan James, out of Oregon. I don't know how you say it. And linebacker, David Benda?
Sure. Let's go with that.
We'll go with Benda. The G is silent, I'm sure.
Yep. So is the B. His last name is Enda.
Enda. He's going to end your life. All right. We're going crazy here. Let's move on. So, next up on the docket of mock drafts, we got our boy Kyle Krabs over in Locked On Dolphins.
This. Yeah.
He knows a thing or two about the Miami Dolphins. He's been covering them for a few years now. So, we as Dolphins fans take his opinion very seriously.
Yes.
As we should, right?
Very
I think
so.
Him and Travis Wingfield are the 2 guys you should probably take pretty seriously.
And Dudley, yep.
And Dudley, they all have their finger on the pulse here. Yep. So Kyle has us going with linebacker. I've seen this one quite a few times now.
I love this pick.
Linebacker Jihad Campbell out of Alabama, which, Josh, I got to give you your due. I'm pretty sure when we were talking defense a few weeks ago, you brought up this name.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was. I think Keith mentioned it in the same sentence as I did, and yeah, this is who I hope we choose. If I'm being completely candid, not to spoil our next, the shows we have later on.
A linebacker at 13.
Yeah, this guy. Oh, well, sorry. Finish round 2.
All right, so it's a linebacker Jihad Campbell out of Alabama. I'm sorry, I got tied up in it too. And defensive lineman Alfred Collins out of Texas. This Texas defensive line must have been good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was phenomenal. And this one is post-combine. So this is taking into account combine results, players jumping up the board, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Javad Campbell is kind of my, I have one every year, is like my man crush, right? This is the guy I hope we pick. I mean, barring any kind of crazy, you know, tumbles in the draft for,
Sure.
this guy would fix the middle of our defense for the foreseeable future. I mean, this guy is like has the potential to be very like elite in my opinion. And he's a box to box linebacker. He's 6'3", 235. He ran a 4.5 40, which put him in the 93rd percentile. He was 94th percentile in broad jump, 93rd percentile in 10-yard splits, 93rd percentile in tackling, 84% or above in pass rush, run defense, and coverage as a linebacker. This guy is your big, tall, do-it-all, can thump, can cover, can run, can strip, can intercept, can pick six. He does everything.
Linebacker though, man, like
it's a need, bro.
It
really
is a
is.
position that doesn't have the gravitas. I use that word twice now. I got to find a different word.
Yep.
It doesn't have the value anymore. It's like the running back of the defense.
But if I could tell you the running back of the defense was Patrick Queen, who's your best linebacker? Who do you think the best linebacker in the league is?
I don't even know. We don't have the guys like we used to have.
Okay, well, let's use the running back analogy. If I told you I could give you a Saquon Barkley on defense, would you take him?
And only have to pay him? You can't know that.
But that is the type of talent that this kid could be, right? That is, for all indicators, and this is all we can do. He could be the Jamar Russell of linebackers for all we know.
Sure.
But he could also be the next elite play. And if you look at statistics and you look at everything that you have in front of you, there is no reason to believe that this player, I mean, unless he just comes into the leagues and thinks his doesn't stink and doesn't put in the work, which is very possible.
Sure.
There's no reason to believe that an Alabama linebacker with his statistics will not produce in the NFL.
I mean, what I'll give you is at least he's closer to the line than Malachi Starks, safety. So he's closer to the trenches, which is good. I'm having, and you know this because we talked about this at the beginning of last year. Yeah. I am not a guy who thinks you should take the trenches in the first round all the time, right? But I just feel like our trenches are bare. Like there's not even any slop in there for the pigs to eat right now.
Well, and there's some clarity with this pick from Kyle Krabs specifically because and I also happen to, not because I'm a huge fan of his, but I also believe that I believe in the logic that he took with this pick, which is this is under the assumption that Miami overcorrects and spends a lot of money in free agency, right? So we get our 2 starting guards, we get a backup tackle, we get, we do a lot in free agency, which will allow us to not have to reach on a player because the offensive linemen are going to be going high and early and often, right? And so the question would be, would you rather at pick 13, and I'm making this up, would you rather take the 6th best offensive lineman or the first top linebacker? You know what I mean?
Like, say though, because you don't know what the talent level is. Like the top 6 offensive linemen could be better than the top linebacker.
It's not. Right? I can promise you, it's not. Right? But you pair this guy next to Brooks, right? And your linebacker core is like the 49ers linebacker core.
Yeah, but like, what good is that if your defensive linemen are always on the floor and your linebackers can't get past the offensive linemen? It's like that's my
true.
And
that's why you have free agency. And that's why you draft a defensive lineman with round 2.
Yeah, I'm with Armando here. Build the trenches heavy because we're gonna miss. We're gonna miss. Of course we are, right? I mean,
of course we are.
Yeah, everybody does.
Hey, we won't miss in unrestricted free agents, but we'll miss in rounds 1 through 4.
Good convo there. Good convo. I love Krabs there. Coming in with the thoughtfulness and the context was great. We'll see how it plays out. I'm so excited for it. So excited.
Yeah,
but that's not the last mock we have.
No, and just a quick comment on his round 2 pick, Alfred Collins out of Texas. This dude is a true nose tackle. 6'6", 332. Ran a sub 540. He ran a 4.9 540 at 6'6", 332.
That's crazy.
This dude is
literally a bus.
Oh, that's exactly what he is. Yeah. And he's awesome. he's better in run defense than he is in anything else, which obvious what you want from your nose tackle.
Love that pick. It's so hard to
contextualize.
It's so hard to judge these mock drafts when we don't know what's going to happen in free agency. And free agency is going to dictate. I mean, at least for like a couple hours, free agency is going to dictate what happens.
And just for those that are listening or watching this later, like we're doing mock draft roundups. We have a series of shows post free agency where we are going to take our stabs at kind of a mock, how we would approach the draft based on the moves that we made, right?
Sure.
Which could very well change all of this, right? I mean, who the hell knows who we sign or who we trade for?
Okay, so this last one is interesting here, and then I have a few
Yep.
players that I've seen that we haven't talked about yet that I want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But this next one from Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers of NFL Stock Exchange. Great guys.
Yeah.
Trevor Sikkema, I hear his name all the time.
This might be my favorite mock that we go over today.
This safety out of South Carolina at post combine has popped up on virtually every mock draft that has been done post combine as the 13th pick in the draft.
Yeah, and you'll understand why when I tell you his first two bullets.
Nick Imanwari?
Yep.
Did I get that?
Imanwari. Yep.
Imanwari out of South Carolina with the first pick. And then the second pick is a versatile offensive lineman, which fits perfectly with what we like to do. Marcus Bowe out of Purdue.
They am silent.
I see that. Thank you for the pronunciation. That's a perfect note right there.
Yeah, that I credit our co-host Taylor for that, because I was like mbao.
It's more fun, to be honest.
It's the Hanson brother. So yeah, Nick Imanwari from South Carolina. This dude is a nightmare. It would be so fun to have on our defense, and so fun in a Wheeler defense. He's a man zone kind of a slot nickel safety, so he can play everywhere. Are you ready for this? Grab onto your seats.
I'm not ready for it.
This is why this dude shot up boards. He's 6'3", 220. He ran a 4.38 40.
Oh.
At 6'3", 220.
4.38?
4.38 at 6'3", 220.
Oh
yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Dude.
I know.
That shouldn't shoot you up draft boards, by the way. I hate that.
With that speed, he might shoot him up.
Nuts.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a type, right? Like, we love speed, and he's 6'3", 220 with speed. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was 96th percentile or higher, so that's an A+ if you're looking at it from a grade scale in college. He's an A+ or higher in height, in 40, in vert, in broad jump, and in 10-yard splits versus his peers. Let me say that again for those in the back that didn't hear it. He is 96th percentile, meaning there are 2 or 3 players in this draft that are better than him in height, in 40, in the 40-yard dash, in vert, in broad jump, and in 10-yard split at the safety position.
Okay. So I'm going to play devil's advocate again, right?
Hit me.
Because I love these guys who rise up the draft board. It's my favorite thing, because it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? This is the first chance we get to hear from NFL scouts and stuff as to what they feel about these players. And that's why there's usually so much movement in mock drafts and rankings, stuff like that. Where was he prior to the mock?
I have no idea.
Prior to
I believe he was a middle to bottom first round type player. I don't remember where I saw him drafted pre-combine, right? Yeah, he is touted as the best tackler in the draft.
I see PFF still has him at 43 overall, and it was just updated yesterday, so that's post-combine already. Yep. I would be curious to see. Look, that doesn't mean I don't like. I mean, those measurables with that speed is, at the very least, would be fun to watch.
Yeah, and I will say this: he's, in my opinion, and I had a man crush for many months on I see I already forgot his name. Who was the safety?
Malachi?
Yeah, Malachi Starks. He's the number 1 safety in my opinion in this draft. This dude is a machine.
Wait, who? Malachi or
no.
Nick or whatever.
Nick.
Okay.
Nick, last name I butcher every time I say it. Yeah, Imanwari. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is a prime example of the combine probably shined light on his film.
South Carolina is probably not seeing much yet.
Right. And when you combine a 6'3", 220 running a sub 4.4 with what he was putting on screen, you're like, okay, this dude's legit. Right?
I'm literally going to go and watch, because somebody always posts like the audiences, which is all the coaches and GMs sitting in the stands, their reaction to a fast, tall guy. I'm going to go watch that after the show.
Yeah. Yep. And just for time's sake, right? Because I do want to get to some hot takes from the deep end if we have time.
Yeah, tell me about this versatile offensive lineman here in a second.
Yeah. So from Purdue, he's a multi-role offensive lineman. This guy is the epitome of kind of a Swiss Army knife, in my opinion. Right.
Mm-hmm.
He can play. I would say his least favorable position is probably center. but good backup, right? And God forbid something happens with Brewer. I think he's probably best suited for guard, but he can play tackle. He's played at Purdue. He played all three at various times. He's 6'4", 303, so got some good mass to him, and he's kind of stout in the butt area, if you will. So that's really good for offensive linemen. He's better as a run blocker than he is a pass blocker. So I personally think this is an okay pick at 2. I would be real curious to see who was there, because I do think that, in my opinion, this might be a tiny bit of a reach. So if we were to maybe trade back a couple spots and get, a 4th or a 5th or whatever the case is,
sure.
This pick would make a lot more sense to me, and I would be more on board with it. But I don't hate it.
I love a versatile offensive lineman.
Yeah,
and so it might be a little too early, top of the 2nd. Maybe you want that top of the 3rd, but.
Mm-hmm. And so does this team. They thrive on versatility.
100%. I mean, that's why they drafted Eichenberg, right?
Yeah, well, unfortunately,
worked out, but
no, sure hasn't. We traded up for him.
Yeah. So listen, this might make you happy. So Chad Reuter did a mock here, and he had Miami trading down to 25 and still getting Jihad Campbell out of that.
Yeah, if that happens, I might need to go change.
Yeah, you won't be on the show anymore. You'll have you'll need to excuse yourself.
Yes, okay. I will.
Other names I've heard.
Family friendly.
A few of them we've talked about here. Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia, I've seen quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
He was my staple for many months.
I remember you mentioned him too.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Walker, the linebacker out of Georgia,
mm-hmm.
I've seen just once. And this other guy I've seen just once as well, which was Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State.
Yeah, I believe Josh Simmons is like Keith's man crush. And Keith, please don't kill me if I got that wrong, but this dude is a mauler. This guy plays like somebody murdered his whole family. I mean, this guy is angry and is strong. He's got like that country strength. And as somebody originally from the South, this guy is somebody, if we can get on our team, we should. I've seen a lot of recent mock drafts that have him going relatively high. Okay. And I've also seen some where he lasts into the late 20s. So he's kind of all over the place, which kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, that's a scary proposition. Okay, so before we get to the takes from the deep end, I do want to repeat the names that we talked about here, just in case anybody who's listening wants to go check out these players for yourself and see what they're all about. So initially, we talked about cornerback Will Johnson out of Michigan and wide receiver Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, as well as tight end Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. So that was a 3-round mock we covered from Merrick Brave of the Phinsider. Josh Liskovitz out of PFF gave us Armand Membu out of Missouri, the tackle/guard, and guard Tyler Booker out of Alabama, which would just be a freaking dream scenario if that ended up coming to fruition. Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins gave us linebacker Jihad Campbell out of Alabama and defensive lineman Alfred Collins out of Texas.
I love it.
And then Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers of the NFL Stock Exchange gave us Nick Emenwari, a safety out of South Carolina, and Marcus Bowe, who is a versatile offensive lineman, plays all 3 positions out of Purdue. Other names you may see out there: Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia, Jalen Walker, the linebacker out of Georgia, Kelvin Banks, the tackle/guard out of Texas, and Josh Simmons, who is the tackle out of Ohio State.
And don't forget the random TJ Warren sighting as well at tight end. Tyler Warren. What did I say? TJ?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Is his nickname TJ? I don't know.
Nope.
It could be. Oh.
Nope.
Tyler. Yeah. So Tyler Warren was Taylor's pick a few weeks ago.
Yep.
Most people have him going to the Colts right behind us. It'd be interesting if we took him there.
I mean, I think honestly, I think that's a perfect fit. Yeah. If I'm being honest. Yeah. Probably.
All right, so guys, let us know your thoughts. Like, you have got to be, if you're a huge Dolphins fan, and if you're watching us here on March 5th, you're a huge Dolphins fan. So thank you so much for coming and watching and hanging out with us. But let us know who your picks are in the comments, man. We want to see, because everybody's wrong this time of year, so I want to see who's the least wrong of all the wrong people, so that we can.
I like it. I want to see who's wrong from all the wrong people. I love it.
Perfect.
Who's all wronger?
Right. Who's the wrongerest of the people? That's a word, right?
I love it. We've gone completely off the deep end. There's a perfect segment, ladies and gentlemen.
There you go.
So this next segment is called Takes from the Deep End, right? This is where not to use a pun, but the water is hot and the takes are hotter, right? So normally how this works, we gather hot takes from those around the community, the Phins Forecast community, whether it be comments, whether it be, takes on shows, comments, post shows, or anywhere on our social media feeds. And we chop it up. We kind of toss them out to the audience, us. It's just the two of us now, so we'll both kind of chat about them. But and we kind of see where we're at with them. So just momentarily, we will get right into that. Hang tight.
Takes from the deep end.
Man, that music hits sometimes, man. I love it,
dude.
So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sir. So why don't you choose a number 1 through 6?
4.
Since there's only 2 of us. Number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So takes from the deep end. Who would you rather have as Tua's high-priced backup? Gardner Minshew or Marcus Mariota?
I'll take C, Jameis Winston. If I have to pick between these two, I think I'm probably going to go with Gardner Minshew just because I like his style. I like his flash. I think that I don't know that he's played better ball than Mariota, but he's played more recent ball than Mariota. So I would probably have to go with Minshew because.
So of those two, you're leaning towards Minshew, but not feeling it either one of those.
Yeah, I would most definitely rather have Jameis.
Fair.
If it came down to these two, though, I'd rather have Minshew.
Yeah, of those three that we mentioned, Minshew, Jameis, or Mariota, I would actually prefer to have Mariota. I think he fits better with kind of what this scheme is. He's, from the same kind of. I think he played at the same high school as Tua. They know each other. Their families know each other. They're both from Hawaii. I think it would just kind of the fit seems, a little bit better.
What we could do, we could sign Brock Purdy to back him up.
There you go. Yeah,
I just solved it, dude.
Man, you're just the GM. You're just solving all kinds of problems. I love it.
I'm all over here.
I absolutely love it, brother. All right, so let's see. Let's go here. Takes from the deep end. Now, this team has been rated number 1 in back-to-back years in player-voted team report cards based on working conditions. Our players clearly have the best of everything, yet they still complain and show up late to team events. Honestly, it's time to clean house. At the end of the season, sorry, this thing is going a little slow, and hit the rebuild button. What are your thoughts?
Okay, it's not time to rebuild, but it is time for new leadership, I think. I said this at the end of last season. I
think we all did. Yep.
Yeah. Wasn't a fan of bringing McDaniel back because I know he gets A+ from the players because he's a player's coach. Of course they're going to give him A+. We need a leader at the position. Players show up late without repercussions because he's not a leader, right? Players talk smack in the media without repercussions because he's not a leader. We need a real leader at head coach. I don't know Mike McDaniel personally, so it's really out of the realm to say that he's not a leader without knowing him. But the things that we see on the field, the things that we see happen after the games, the way the team collapses in key moments, I mean, these are all indicators that they just don't have a strong enough leader.
Yeah, I think, look, where you can like Mike McDaniel as, seems like a pretty chill dude, but where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And there's been too many instances where this team either A, doesn't seem prepared or doesn't seem engaged or doesn't seem, on the flip side, seems stubborn in their decision-making, both from a player standpoint and from a coaching standpoint. Jesus, I just spit all over myself. Sorry. I just, I'm with you. At the end of the season, I was very weary because word was that, if you use the term hot seat, that Mike McDaniels and Chris Grier were on the hot seat going into next season. And you and I talked about it with the fellas at length, where I think you and I were pretty aligned on this, where it's like, if you're going into the next season with your coach and or GM, in this case, both on the hot seat,
right?
What's the point of risking blowing through, call it half a season when you fire your coaches, as opposed to making the move now, moving into a different direction and kind of hitting a quasi reset?
I mean, exactly. There's no interim head coach ever that has made it to the playoffs or made it to the Super Bowl, or if you fire your coach in the middle of a season, you are admitting that season is over, right? And that's a killer. Why would you even want to watch at that point? And we still have to talk about it for however many weeks that ends up being. which
Right.
selfishly, I don't want to do that.
But I will say from a content standpoint, it does make some juicy stuff.
It will be great. I will say, listen, I will say, I don't know where you stand on this, Josh. I am a fan of empathetic leadership. I love the fact that leaders are becoming more aware of the feelings of the people that they lead and their needs and trying to take care of that, right? What I don't think is that it's a fine line, because if you go too far and there aren't repercussions, or the people don't look at you as the leader anymore, more as a friend, that's too far for me, right? Like, I mean, I taught last year, right? I taught adults. That's a very difficult thing because they're adults. They're not kids. They don't automatically give you respect or anything like that. Like, I earned that respect by being empathetic to their needs, but also if they did something stupid or they did something wrong, they got punished for that. They had to deal with the repercussions of that. Like, you can't have empathy without, punishment for taking advantage of that sort of leadership style.
Right. And what was a common theme? And we said this on the podcast, and we weren't the only ones that said it, but like, what was the common thing last year? Theme last year? There didn't seem to be any sort of accountability.
Right.
Right. And that's what happens, to your point, when I don't want to use the word overcorrect, but when you lean into that more empathetic style of leadership, as opposed to and I wouldn't go the hard other side either, where you're a complete disciplinarian and you
that
don't
doesn't work anymore.
No,
right? Like,
because then your players are held to standards that they feel like they can't meet. You need somewhere in the middle. Ideally, a coach like Mike Tomlin, I feel like, and I know it's like, hey, grab the guy that's never had a losing season. That's the easy thing to do. But a coach like that, because he seems to to have found that razor's edge between being empathetic when needed, learning what players need the coddle, what players you can be hard with, what players don't need any kind of direction because they're self-motivators, and so on and so forth. And Mike McDaniel, I feel like, really just leans into that. I'm going to be everyone's best friend. High five. We'll figure this out later.
You and I are both huge fans of the show Ted Lasso, and one of the I think it's episode 3. Like, you're already getting this feeling that Ted Lasso is a very positive. He leads with positivity, right?
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So, so I won't go into too much detail. He leads with positivity, but by the 3rd episode, you can already tell there's one player in particular that is being too much. He's Right. He's not falling into the leadership style that Lasso's pitching. So then Lasso has to what? Discipline him, right? Like, it just doesn't matter how much positivity or how much empathy or how much friendliness you put into being a coach. You still are the leader, and that's as much as we've been on this soapbox for 5 minutes now. Let's move on.
So I know we're a little bit over where we normally end, but there is one more that I like to get to, and I will just present it to you and let you give your thoughts on it.
Let's do 2 more. Let's make it 4. It makes for a better cut up.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. A little back-scene conversation for those that are watching. All right. So this one is really fun. This kind of goes right into what we were just talking about. So would it be a complete failure if we walk away from rounds 1 and 2 with key starters, example being a star linebacker and a starting safety, but neither of the first 2 picks are on the offensive line? Would you consider the draft a complete failure?
I mean, I can't call it that because I don't know how good these guys are going to be yet. That's like saying I have a crystal ball. Would I be annoyed? Hell yeah, I would be annoyed. I mean, especially if in free agency we didn't do what we thought we needed to do to address, the trenches. I mean, we've been talking for weeks now ad nauseum about how the trenches need to be rebuilt. So to come out of the first 2 rounds with a linebacker and a safety, that's great. We filled 2 needs, but our trenches are still crap.
Well, I mean, assuming I guess I assume that the person that put this take in was under the assumption that we addressed it, like we'd mentioned, like they addressed something in free agency.
If it's addressed, it's addressed, right? Like, I'm not going to say like, oh, we need to sign 4 offensive linemen and draft 3 of them. That's ridiculous. Like, that's the overcorrection we've been talking about. If we sign 3 guys who are potential starters and we draft another one in I would say the first 2 days you still have to draft an offensive lineman. But if that's picked round 3, then that's fine.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, I agree with you. Call it 90%, right? I think if we come away with key starters at the linebacker and the safety position, and we sign at least one starter, call it, in free agency, I think it was a success in my opinion, right? Because to your point, we filled key positions of need at the middle of our defense and the back end of our defense with players that are going to be long-term solutions potentially.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, at the end of the day, we'll end up judging this draft based on how good the players in the first 3 rounds end up being.
Of course.
And then anybody else who's good 4 through 7, that's
icing on the cake.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it. All right. So last take of the evening. Again, for those that are new to the show, these aren't our takes. We just collect and rebuttal and allows us to have some fun conversations. So in the same draft vein, right? We never seem to hit on offensive linemen in the draft. We should just nut up and sign 2 high-priced starters in free agency and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with this, to be honest. I really
me
would.
Too.
Me too.
I think that's a real quick one. And because that is a quick one, unless you have something else you'd like to add.
Let's go.
The last one that I have for tonight's show, I'm actually glad we get to it. This is a DK Metcalf take.
There we go.
Takes from the deep end, right? DK Metcalf should be the last thing we swing a trade for, unless word comes down the pipe that the Bills are in on him.
Oh, 100%. If the Bills are in on him, you swoop, baby. You swoop.
Here's Tyreek Hill in a third.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans out there, but you vulture that, all right? You hop in there and you steal that crap. We are not letting the Bills get better.
Yep.
You got to pull a
God,
Philly.
could you imagine him on the Bills? Ugh.
The Bills are right now like one of the favorites for Holland.
Oh my God, that would just be such a Dolphins thing.
Annoying.
Wouldn't it just be such a Dolphins thing?
It would be so annoying.
That spiteful little twerp. Better not go there. That's
All
it,
right.
brother.
That's it. So this is a terrific show, Josh. Love chopping it up with you here for nearly 2 hours. We talked everything about free agency, what do Greer and McDaniel usually look for over the past 3 years in free agency? What do we think they should look for in free agency? We've got our first, not our first draft coverage, but we started to get into it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got some names to look up now. Hopefully you were writing them down. You can rewind. It's YouTube. It's fine.
Yep.
Go back, look at those names. Watch some highlight videos on YouTube. That's all I'll be doing. And get prepped for the draft. It's coming fast. The end of April.
Yeah. Gonna be here before you know it.
Yeah. And free agency starts next week. So, and then we get into a lull where nothing happens for 2 months or something like that. And then we're back in football action.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you to Armando and Luat in the chat for joining us live tonight. Every single Wednesday night at 7 p.m. we will be live, except for draft day where we'll be live during the draft. So come join us.
Yes.
That's a Thursday night. And I don't know if we're doing day 2, but maybe we'll let you know.
And just a quick announcement, right? Make sure you're tuned into next show. We have a huge announcement.
Right.
Talking about a guest that's going to be joining us for the March 19th.
Yeah.
Oh, that is next show, isn't it?
The show after next.
The show after next. Yeah. So next show, make sure to join us. We have a huge guest. I am super excited that he's going to be joining us for most of the show.
Reacting to free agency.
Yeah. And it is for our free agent reaction show. So stay tuned.
Going to be awesome. Can't wait. So for Josh, aka Aqua Ace, I'm Anthony Penzone. This has been another episode of the Phins Forecast. Please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Hit the little notification bell if you want to know when we're going live. It's every Wednesday at 7. You already know. And join us next week as we're going to talk more about free agency and more about the NFL draft. It is our favorite time of year. So until next time, Fins up.